Hey, what's up? Welcome back. Moving on, acoustic guitars. Similar to our last video, we're going to start out just by reaffirming some of our frequencies of interest and common trouble spots. So, acoustic guitars. Usually, my first order of business is to apply our high pass. It's very common for acoustic guitars, raw acoustic guitars, to have an excess amount of boomy low end that we do not want. So 75 hertz is usually going to be a safe bet. Obviously, use your ears. It can be a little bit higher. It can be a little bit lower, but a high pass is always going to be an essential part of your acoustic guitar EQ processing. Next, I'm going to consider whether or not the acoustic guitar needs any major tilting. Do we need to make any wide cuts or boosts? Specifically, I'm listening for the overall presence of the low-mid body, 200 to 1K, and the high-mid presence and brightness, so 2.5K to 6K. Do both of those large regions feel relatively balanced with one another, or do I need to kind of do some subtle tilting left or right either way to make it feel more even, more balanced? Finally, I'm going to listen through and try to specifically identify whether or not there are any overly present mid-range frequencies that I need to notch out. It's common for between 350 hertz and 1.5K. That within that range, there's some unflattering frequency buildup happening with an acoustic guitar. I'm just going to listen through, see if I can identify if there are any, find them, narrowly notch them out, and just kind of surgically remove them a little bit. And that's the game plan. Those are our three major moves that we want to make with our tone shaping EQ for acoustic guitars. So with that said, let's jump to Pro Tools. This first song is called Thunder Canyon by Paul Harrold and the Nuclear Bandits. Like in the last video, we have the instrumental on top and our acoustic guitar on the bottom. Let's start by just taking a listen and seeing what we got. This features the EQ Engage. The EQ is on the acoustic guitar. Let's hear it.
Bird atop your tree.
Cool. Let's see what our EQ looks like and hear the guitar in isolation. Now let's turn off all these bands, hear what the track sounded like before EQ. Cool. There's a lot of mid-range cutting happening, but before we get there, we should just look at our high pass. Our high pass is placed pretty aggressively at about 95. We can actually just solo it really fast and hear some of those underwater sounding frequencies that we're cutting. Yep, so we don't need any of that. We're going to kill it. The next adjustment to look at is our most aggressive notching out here happening at about 330. We have two separate bands basically kind of doing the same thing. Let's hear that range in isolation. Yeah, so that little narrow range needed to get notched out, and I was not satisfied with just that one narrow band. I wanted to add the wider one that kind of just takes out that entire space. Let's hear some before and afters. Nice. So with both of these bands engaged, I feel like I can immediately hear a big difference. It already feels dramatically more clear. And, a good example of how you can cut within a cut. We've got a wide cut here, and then within it, a more narrow notch happening to really extract that space. And it's aggressive, too. I mean, we're cutting that 330 hertz by about 9 dB, so it's really aggressive. Let's move on, talk about our next band, which is the narrow cut happening above it, about 750 hertz. Let's hear that. Yeah, another one that just feels overly present to me. It's kind of driving me crazy. Let's turn on the band and hear the difference. Nice, definitely worth the cut, feels better. Let's keep going here and look at this next notch, this red adjustment at about 2.3K. Let's hear it. Yeah, really an unflattering kind of radio-like frequency that I just do not want as much of. So definitely worth the notch there. With these 3 adjustments, things already feel better. Let's look at our last 2 adjustments. I very subtly lowered the fundamental, the low body of our acoustic guitar. I just wanted it to feel a little thinner just because there's so much other stuff also happening in the arrangement. Let's just hear that range. Nice, so it's not working very hard, but I feel like it makes a difference. It just tucks away that boomy bottom of our acoustic guitar even more. And then finally, we have a high shelf that just gently rolls off our highest of highs because the guitar just feels a little bit too brittle to me on top. I'm getting a little bit more of that high-end string picking action than I would like. Let's actually solo this high shelf and hear what we're cutting. Cool, sounds good. Now let's toggle it on and off. Hear the difference. Nice, a subtle adjustment, but worth it. I think it does a lot to just smooth out the top end. And that's it. That does it for our acoustic guitar adjustments for this song. Let's hear some before and afters in context of the song. Cool, right on. All of those adjustments are feeling great. Happy with how the acoustic guitar is sounding for this song. Let's move on to the next one. This next song is called Barely Strangers by Jake Bernard, a great LA-based singer-songwriter. I produced, recorded, and mixed this song. Had a great time working with Jake. He's a good dude. Like always, let's get started and just listen to the song featuring the EQ adjustments and hear what we got.
5 years have gone by since we gave it one more try.
Nice. What a beautiful song. This just brings back such fond memories of those sessions. So let's pull up our EQ here, listen again while looking at our EQ curves.
5 years have gone by since.
Cool. Now we can turn off these bands, hear how the guitar sounded before EQ.
5 years have gone by since we gave it one.
Nice. I think the raw acoustic guitar track sounds pretty good as is. I didn't really have to do very much heavy lifting with this. It already was basically doing what I wanted it to do. The first adjustment let's look at is the high pass. You know it and you love it. For this one, I was not as aggressive as the last song. This high pass is placed at about 75 hertz. The acoustic guitar in this song is a way more central element. There's not as much of a full band arrangement, so I didn't want to kill as much low end. The first notch that we should look at is the one that is the most dramatic. It's this narrow blue guy at about 740 hertz. Let's hear what is happening in this range. Yeah, I don't know what's happening with that. It's like he's playing a bunch of open strings, and that particular note is present in every chord, and it's just driving me crazy. So the first order of business is to just notch that out. The next adjustment to look at is the yellow guy above it. This is at about 1.5K. Let's take a listen. Yeah, so it is basically the octave of the adjustment we just now made, right? So the first adjustment, this blue guy was about 750, and then the next one, this yellow guy is at 1.5. So they're kind of octaves of one another, which is why it makes sense that they're both problem spots. So having made those two adjustments, let's look at adjustment kind of 3 and 4, which is basically doing the same thing as this purple and red guy. I'm trying to notch out and extract 350 hertz. Let's hear what this range sounds like. And then we can engage it. Nice, and then soloing, it looks like at about 300 hertz. Cool. They're right next to each other. They're basically tackling the same space. I felt like this was just a bit of an overly resonant frequency that I did not want to hear. Finally, we have this high shelf cut. Again, I just wanted to reduce some of the brittleness, some of the brightness of the guitar, make it a little bit more smooth, a little bit more warm feeling overall. We can hear this range in isolation. Yeah, so it's all that really bright jangle, that crispy brittleness, and to me, it just needed a bit of a shelf. I just wanted to reduce it and smooth it out. I never wanted the acoustic guitar to feel harsh. And with that, let's turn off all of our bands. Again, we can hear some overall before and afters.
5 years have gone by since we gave it one more try. Five years have gone by since we gave it one more try.
Cool, so not a massive night and day difference, but you know, it doesn't always have to be. It doesn't have to be dramatic. We can keep it subtle. I definitely think it was worth it to identify and notch out those mid-range treble spots. To me, it just brought that extra edge of clarity that we didn't have before. And that wraps up our deep dive on acoustic guitars. I will see you in the next video where we will look at vocals.